Welcome to Elevating Voices in Leadership podcast, brought to you in partnership with Pepperdine University's Graduate School of Education. I'm Dr. Gabriela Miramontes, and I will be your host today. With me today are my co-hosts, Dr. Maria Brame and Dr. Asia Ghazi. Today, our guests are Cynthia Trejo, who is an entrepreneur, educator, mentor, coach, and advocate who is dedicated to empowering women with more than 25 years of experience in business, sales, and marketing strategies. Cynthia focused her efforts on assisting women to optimize their advancement in their career and in business. She helps transform women's lives with leadership and professional development training, programs, seminars, and workshops, inspiring women to become leaders in their communities. Also with us today is Melissa O'Brien, who offers a history of educational leadership and technology, organizational administration, coaching, and mentorship. Melissa successfully served more than 30 years in the U.S. military with vast experience in leadership, organizational development, program management, human resource management, and team building. Her background includes work in both domestic and international environments, including combat operations. She has collaborated with all branches of service within the Department of Defense, as well as interagency and multinational partners. So welcome to both of you, Melissa and Cynthia, and thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. So the reason we asked you here today, and it's interesting, it wasn't in the bio, but both of you are part of Her Element Network, correct?
Yes.
Yes. And so today we're here to talk a little bit more about women in leadership, about the work that Her Element Network is doing, which, you know, I'm 100% supportive of and completely behind. In fact, today I posted, I woke up feeling inspired based on our conversation yesterday, Cynthia, and I was like, you know, I really need to put it out there because you guys are doing some amazing work, both through the network and through the foundation. So I just wanted to acknowledge it. And maybe, who knows, get you a little bit more support from the academic community. So that was this morning. So with that in mind, why don't we go ahead and get started? Tell us a little bit to begin with about Her Element. I know we've talked about Her Element before, but just as a reminder to our listeners, tell us a little bit about the organization.
Sure. Excuse me. My allergies are a little bit. So Her Element is a mission-driven company that's dedicated to empowering women at all levels. And our vision is to create a global network of women elevating women. And what we do is we mentor, we provide leadership training, development programs, coaching, mentoring, workshops, all inspired to help women to become leaders in their organizations and in their communities. We also have a nonprofit. You mentioned the nonprofit, Dr. Gabby, and the nonprofit is to help the underserved, underrepresented community, BIPOC community, young women, high school seniors, and women of color, and guiding them and helping them to the forefront of leadership. So these two organizations work hand in hand. Of course, today we're going to be talking about Her Element and the training and development. And by the way, Dr. Gabby, thank you so much for that shout out on LinkedIn. I appreciate it. It was very humbling. It was, I was like, it was just very touching. Thank you so much for that.
You're welcome. So thank you for that overview. So what prompted you to start Her Element Network? I know that it's around challenges that women face, but tell me more about those challenges.
Yes. Sure. You know, what my background is, and I think I shared this in a previous conversation, but my background is financial services. But, you know, as I was preparing mentally for what I was going to share today, I was thinking, well, how far back have I been working with women? You know, I in financial services, my focus was to help women and preparing them for retirement and making sure that they were okay. But I thought, you know, when did this start in my interest in helping women? And I think it goes back to when I was a child. And I might have even shared this before. You know, I was raised in a very machismo culture, and machismo in English language, I guess, would be, you know, very male dominated masculinity type of culture. And so my voice, you know, I've always been a very strong person. And so as a young child, when I spoke up, it was not okay. You know, my voice was to be silenced as a female. And so I fought that like all my life. I fought that. And when I went into financial services and I started to focus on women, I noticed how other women felt the same way. And so I thought, all this time that I thought that I was going through this thing on my own, feeling silenced and not heard, other women were facing the same thing. And so I started to think, how can I help? How can I help women overcome insecurities, confidence issues, lack of knowledge, just things that hold us back, right? Things that we ourselves hold ourselves back. And so I started looking into ways of how I can just, one individual at a time, helping and assisting. And eventually those things turned into workshops, which turned into training, which now has turned into a whole, we have over 5 different programs in which we help women excel and succeed in the workplace.
So you talked about the silencing piece. What other challenges do you see in the workplace that you try to help women with?
So, with women, as we started to work towards this, and I was interviewing women in the financial services industry, and it developed into what it is today with Her Element. I would say the biggest challenge for women is confidence, right? And that's the reason why that's our first course. But, challenges in communication, speaking up in meetings, feeling confident to be able to share ideas, being assertive, sharing your brand. How do you want to be known in spaces when you're not there, right? That we have a program on leveling up your personal brand. So how do you want to be spoken of and known for in the line of business that you're doing, or in the line of work that you're doing, to make sure that those doors are opening for you and not remain silent. So there, it all revolves around soft skills.
So, I loved, this is so great. And I love what you're doing. It's absolutely wonderful. And it sounds like the challenges that women face, are you finding they're sort of consistent, no matter where the women, what the background is? Do you want to talk about that a little bit? Because I can relate. And my background was different, but somehow, I don't know if it's just general socialization, regarding, that self-confidence piece is really huge.
Right. Melissa, feel free to reach, to speak whenever you feel like, because I don't want to, take over the whole conversation, but it is, it's not in the sense of, I speak of my culture and how I was raised and very male dominated home. But I didn't see that it was, based on the fact whether I was Hispanic or I was speaking to someone who was non-Hispanic. These are things that women in general have, that we have to fight for, have to fight for that voice to be heard, to feel confident, to not feel like, like we're second class, or we're not worthy, or we're not knowledgeable. There's so many things, but yes, there's a pattern of the things that women face. And in our courses, we have 9 courses. We address the different challenges and that women face, and then how to overcome them through exercises, through training, through and we'll go into that a little bit more, but we address all those areas.
So Dr. Gabby and Dr. Brahm, I will say, in my experience, when I met Cynthia, and I happened to meet her at a Women in Business conference where I sat on a panel, and then she was one of the mentors that was there. And of course, when they introduced Cynthia, I was like, I got to go to her table so I can sit with her and talk to her. But when she reached out to me during COVID, and she started talking to me about Her Element, what she'd been doing, what her vision was, and where she wanted this to go, I was sold. Because being a female in the military, it's male dominated. There's no other way around it. More women serve today than ever, but it's still a male dominated field. And And, the thing that I found, Cynthia talks about her upbringing. Well, the thing that I found in my upbringing was that, I was a product of a single parent. She was disabled. She took care of my grandmother who was disabled. So it put me in a position where I had to be more helpful. And so for me, it really helped along the way with my confidence. But then going into the military, you're kind of stripped down, and I don't mean literally, but you're stripped down and you're molded into what they want you to be as a soldier. But the thing that I found was that oftentimes being talked over, I could say the same thing, somebody else in the room would say the exact same thing, but I wasn't acknowledged. And so my experiences, and then as I started to look around, I saw this happening a lot. And so I had to get on board with Cynthia to help. And of course, like she said, mastering everyday confidence, that is our first course. It's foundational to the rest of the course, just because of what women experience. And I got to tell you, and some of the people that we've engaged with, it doesn't matter what level of leadership that you are in within your organization. There is a point in time where you have what I'll call a confidence thief. Will steal that confidence away in some of the most brief ways that make you kind of either not speak up or question yourself later. And so with that, these courses, we start with confidence, and they're progressive, they're sequential. We jump right into goal setting because we want to help women develop a roadmap for their success. But it starts with confidence and then direction.
Right.
I'm so curious about that. What does a confidence thief situation look like?
Well, I mean, you've heard of microaggressions, right? That subtle comment that is kind of like, a needle in the back, so to speak, and it's just so subtle that, others around may not realize what's happening at the time, but you feel it, because that is that your intuition, your intuition leaves you feeling a certain way. And so we want to help women recognize that so that they can analyze at the time what is happening. And rather than let it be some like passive aggressive behavior, they are given the tools and they are empowered to, address that and to deal with it in a positive way.
Right. It's identifying those triggers, right? What's creating that trigger that's making you feel unconfident? Melissa mentioned a subtle, like a microaggression, right? A subtle comment that makes you question, is it me? Right? Am I just being too sensitive? was that person really being, were they being not nice? Am I taking this wrong? And you start to question yourself as opposed to the situation. This is the situation that I'm facing. How am I gonna work through this, as opposed to taking it on ourselves and saying it's me?
That is so, thank you so much for that. Is that one of the, I've heard myself say that to myself so many times. Am I being too sensitive? Is that a common kind of response, like internal response?
Yeah. We tend to internalize things, right? And what I came to see as I was working with these individuals and asking questions, they were sharing very private moments with me, right? But as I spoke to another individual, they shared the same things. I'm like, if we only knew, if we could only talk to each other and share these situations, that it's not just you. When what I grew up with, I thought that it was just me, that it was my upbringing, but it wasn't my upbringing. It's a thing that we have to overcome as a society and within, as women, and the things that we overcome. And we're not facing these things individually. we're facing them together. And in this program, it's in a cohort, it's in a group, and we're having these conversations and we're learning from each other and we're understanding it's not just me. I'm not taking things personally.
I mean, you just were the perfect example, Dr. Braum, in saying that, man, so many times I have felt this, and in these cohorts, every single one of these women say the exact same thing, time and time again.
It's interesting. We just had a weekend session, and one of the things I was talking to our students, they're about to go through their qualifying exams, which is this really big exam that all of our doctoral students have to go through in order to move from one phase of the program to another. It's high stakes. They can take it twice. If they don't pass it by the second time, they're actually removed from the program. And obviously there's policy around that and there's caveats and things like that. But one of the things that we were talking about was their level of confidence. And, you know, I have the tendency when there's a mistake, I immediately assume it's me. Like I never stop, and my colleagues have probably seen me at one point or another. I check myself first. It's like, I never assume it's outside. I always think it's me. Did I do something wrong? Did I cause this? And I've had, you know, it's interesting. I've had supervisors in the past that actually weaponize language, right? Because that's really what you're talking about. Many years ago, I had a supervisor who got into my head so badly that as I was leaving to start another job, and I've shared this story with the team at some point or another. So I was switching jobs and I was leaving one supervisor, moving into a completely different organization. The night before I started my new job, I was in tears because I so thoroughly believed the language that had been shared with me about my deficiencies that I remember talking to Jimmy, my husband, and saying, I can't do this. I'm not going to be able to do this job. What if I can't do it? What if I don't know how to do it? What if all of that was said was true?
Wow.
And it was horrible. Granted, I knew I could do this job. And in fact, you know, I excelled in the company. I was there for a really long time. And then I had a different type of weaponized language used against me. So I'm pretty direct. I have a direct disposition, right? The team knows that I'm quirky, but I'm direct. And for a long time, they used my communication style as weaponized language. It got to the point where I started asking for examples because I needed to improve my communication style, right? My communication style was always problematic. The way I talked to people was problematic. And when I asked for concrete examples, they couldn't give them to me, right? It was always, you're too direct. And what was interesting was I had internal stakeholders and external stakeholders. The external stakeholders never had anything negative to say. In fact, I was always getting compliments, and because I was, I dealt with issues immediately. They felt confident in the work we were producing, all that great stuff. And I said, how is it that the communication issues are always internal, but our external clients never complain? Mm-hmm. And the response was, well, you need to treat our internal stakeholders the same way you treat the external ones. I was like, but I do, right? And so I could never get any feedback as to what that language issue was. And the reality was, I'm just a direct communicator, right? So I completely understand the confidence issue. I understand the weaponization of language and how we get gaslighted a lot of times, or gaslit. Is it gaslit or is it gaslighted?
Gaslighting, gaslighting. I don't know.
Whatever it is in the past tense, but it happens in the present tense too, all the time.
Yes. Yeah, being gaslighted is the right way to say it.
Got it. Thank you.
So Dr. Gabby, oh my gosh, you totally like blew my mind just now with weaponized language, because my exit out of the military was not the way that I had hoped that it would be, for the exact reasons that you speak of. Cynthia knows, we had this conversation. We were talking about, we were doing our strategic planning, and I'm a very direct person. In the military, that's what we're how we're developed, to be very direct, because it's a matter of time, resources, money, the mission, or lives. So I've always been very direct. And so in the same organization, in one period, I was like the go-to person, the golden child, leadership was always knocking on my door, and there was never a time I was going to say no, because it's an opportunity, right? In the same organization, under different leadership, that weaponized language was like dark. So I totally understand it. And there are so many women out there who, they need to hear this, and they need to understand, how do I address this? And so in our course, one of the things that we do when it comes to having those tough conversations is we have tools, and one of them is like sentence starters. And it's interesting how these can help diffuse the situation, or even put people at ease and feel comfortable enough to open up. Because as women, we have to have those tough conversations. And I think that your example about, well, can you give me an example? That is a great response to that. And so we try to teach women these tools so that, initially, I can be high and right really quick, but we have to work on our soft skills, emotional intelligence, self-awareness of what's going on, so that we can address these tough situations, hard conversations.
Right. It's not that women aren't capable, because we are very capable, right? More women are earning college degrees than men, right? More women are opening businesses than men. But we're not in the C-suites. And when, women in business, when it comes to raising venture capital, they're not asking for the money. And when they do ask, they're asking for less. And so it's not that we don't have the ability, the capability, the knowledge, the degrees, the business, the knowledge. That's not what's holding us back. It's ourselves. And so I'm a firm believer that if we can overcome those internal blocks, then we can definitely go against those external blocks that are out there.
And we've proven time and again that we can reach the C-suites, right?
Mm-hmm.
But who has the power to keep us there? And that, I think, is the other conversation, because when you look at downsizing, when you look at how organizations make decisions, who stays, who goes, how are those decisions made? And it's very telling. Like, I've always said that stress brings out the true nature of leadership, because you all know that's my space. And when you see how people respond under stress and the leadership that comes through, you start seeing some of that basis. You start seeing people's true values. We start seeing how people truly feel about women in these spaces. And I think that's critical. We need to see more women we need to see more women in the C-suite so that we can stay in the C-suite, right? I think that's part of the bigger picture.
Right. And of course, having that role model, right? Seeing someone in that C-suite, as you mentioned, Dr. Gabby, right? We need those role models. We need those sponsors. We need those mentors, because then we feel, yes, I can do it too, right? That's important.
Yeah, I 150,000% love everything that you're doing and what we're talking about. And so I'm wondering if you can talk about some of your success stories. I'd love to hear about your students, what they're doing, what they've learned, and yeah.
We do have some success stories. In fact, Melissa and I were talking about those today. We have several. We're trying to figure out which ones to share. But so we had one of the participants in our cohort, an attorney actually. She was in our training, that particular course that we were in. We have some activities that we have the individuals do in the training. And so, Melissa touched a little bit on that, a phrase. We had them work on a method and a phrase on how to have those difficult conversations. And so we went over that training, and then we said, okay, now go apply this at work. Find a phrase that you want to use this week. And so this attorney was mentioning that she had a situation that was getting pretty difficult. And so she used this method, and it diffused the situation. And so she came back and she shared, she was very excited about it, that she basically used the phrase verbatim. And so it helped her go into a difficult conversation. Sometimes as women, we may shy away from having those confrontations, right? Because a confrontation doesn't necessarily have to be ugly. It's a matter of, conflict resolution is one of our training courses. So conflict doesn't necessarily mean negative, but you do have to feel confident in being able to go, against that conflict. So that, that's one of our examples. But Melissa, I don't know if you want to go ahead and share another, or I can continue to share.
Can I ask, are you able to share the phrase that that your client used?
No, I don't have the phrase. I can at a later time. It's,
okay.
There's a list. There was a list of phrases that we can use to have those difficult conversations.
Got it.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. Yeah, go ahead.
So I recall, and Cynthia, you'll have to correct me if I'm incorrect about the way I recall this. But there was an individual in our cohort, and she talked about, one of the courses we cover is executive communication, or executive presence communication, and of course the confidence. And she, even in the class, she was often quiet, and a lot of times, myself or Cynthia or whoever was the instructor is kind of found themselves, they would call on her to conversate. But the one thing that she shared is that there was a meeting, and in that meeting, she decided to share an idea about a project that they had been looking at doing. And she was so excited when she came back because it was so well received. After the meeting, the manager wanted to sit down with her, have a conversation, and her kind of lay out, her idea, in greater detail on this. And so she was so excited about that. And she was so forthcoming to share that when she came back into the class. So it was, I'm getting chills right now just talking about it, because those are the successes. Those are the small goals. Those are the small wins that we want to help women celebrate in each other and themselves.
Right. We had another was an individual. She's a director within this organization, and this organization is an international company, so it's a pretty good size, a couple of thousand employees. And the CEO was having a conversation with her about who should take his place once he decides to step away. And she's telling me, I had all the answers. I was pointing at this individual and sharing why this individual was wonderful. And she was sharing all these, thoughts and ideas of who she felt would be a great person to take his place. And he turned around and told her, that's interesting. Why wouldn't you nominate yourself? And she was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think, I didn't even consider that. And so in having that conversation with her in our training, I asked her, what held you back? What held you back from saying, I can do this? And she's like, well, I know the company, I know like 90% of the company. And so that's another conversation, right? She's saying, I know about 90% of the company. I've been in sales, I've been there, I've been doing this, but there's this part here that I don't know, that 10%, right? And again, statistics here. Men feel that if they have at least 60% of the knowledge to obtain a position, they feel confident in their ability to apply for that position, where a female will feel, I need to know 100% of this. And that statistic came to life with this conversation with this individual, because she didn't know 10% of that part of the business. Well, what happened within this cohort is that we have women from different parts of the different departments. And so this individual was a director. She started talking to the manager in another department, and this manager was helping her with that 10% that she didn't know, which was finance, the finance part of the company. And so she was guiding her with that. And she's now preparing herself to make herself one of those individuals that can step up and say, I can be that person.
That is so cool. And I love that, just that tidbit of how, and I can completely relate to the feeling of needing to feel like you're 100% competent to do a particular job in order to even, consider applying for it. And then considering that, oh, there are thousands of other people who are 150%, competent. That is so fascinating. I'm wondering, do you have, with these particular, looks like they might have been like mid-level managers or something along those lines. Are there kind of specific, or does it vary a lot in terms of age ranges for your clients when they kind of recognize, oh, okay, I need help in this area? How does that work for you?
It's interesting. So I do keep track of all that. Our range is anywhere from 25 to, I believe it's 56. So okay. It's the working woman, right? Because as we're getting older, you're looking at considering retiring. And so maybe those positions of leadership may not be something that, and I shouldn't speak for everybody because that may be different, right? I'm 56 years old. I still want to go into a leadership role, even though I have my own business. So, so that's the age range. Mm-hmm. As far as roles in leadership roles, our focus is mid-management, but anyone can benefit from these courses, right? Whether they're in the beginning leadership role, and the leadership, as we share, leadership is not based on a title. It's on your, seeing the opportunity to make a difference, whether it's within a project, an opportunity within your workflow or with individuals. And so that leadership opportunity is not based on a role.
Mm-hmm. Wow, there's so much going on. So either you, Cynthia, or Melissa, tell us, I guess we've been talking peripherally about the program, right? And about certain courses in the program. So tell us, so that our readers are aware, about the program itself, if you will. What is it? What is the program? What's the vision behind the program? What's the intent?
So the program is called REACH. It's our Career Accelerator program. And what it does is it prepares participants with knowledge, soft skills, tools that they need to create value within their teams, drive change in their organizations, and further their advancement in leadership. The program, it's the Women's Executive Leadership Program, and it's a 54-hour program. It's 9 courses. Generally, it's all online. Generally, we meet once a week for 2 hours. And we do a multitude of guided discussions, practical exercises, personal reflection activities, multiple self-development assessments, and it culminates with a capstone project, which is their career growth plan. And so the vision is that when anyone goes through this program, that in the end, they have a plan going forward. That it's not set in stone, it's continually evolving, but they have a blueprint, they have a roadmap that sets them on a direction to achieve, whatever their personal and professional growth looks like. And again, like I said, the other thing too, and this is kind of something that we talked about in the program, it's an optional thing. Cynthia may elaborate a little bit more, but we offer that reach back, and generally we'll offer up, we call it an empower circle, where we have a mentor that works with the group to make sure, see where they're at in their career growth plan. A lot of what we use, we want women to feel like they are making an impact. And so we use this impact method, and it's part of helping them, identify what their goals are, what direction they want to go, what methods are available to them. It's also about projecting what are the challenges, what are the barriers, what are the needed resources, who are the people that they need, in their corner to help them, achieve this success. It's developing an action plan, and it's taking the steps. And then after that, it's celebrating, because that's so important. Again, I think I mentioned that earlier. It's important to celebrate the small goals and the milestones, to stay motivated in that, and then testifying about their success, becoming a mentor. And we want to see that paying it forward, and we want to change the narrative for women.
Right. The courses that there's 9 courses, and those courses, as we mentioned, and we touched a lot on, is mastering everyday confidence. We also have goal setting for success, and goal setting, looking at your individual strengths and virtues, and then setting goals based on who you are. Effective conflict resolution, and as I mentioned, conflict doesn't necessarily have to be a negative, and so overcoming that mindset, right, and looking at the different scenarios of conflict. You have, conflict within yourself, conflict with another individual, maybe within a group, the different scenarios of conflict and how one can overcome or work through that conflict. Leveling up your personal brand, that's huge, right? How we're seen, we're one, I don't know if you all have ever heard, my work will speak for itself. Your work will not speak for itself. It'll show maybe that you're a very hard worker and you may be given more work, but that doesn't necessarily equal that you'll be given more responsibility or more opportunities for advancement. And so your brand, how you're seen, how you want to be seen, we all have a personal brand, whether we do it ourselves and how we want to be seen, or how other people perceive us. So how do we want to be perceived, right? Accountability and self-awareness is huge. So we have a course on that. Strategic leadership, power, and influence. And I'll touch a little bit on where the different courses come from. But these are, I'm just naming the courses right now. Executive presence and communication. And then we ended up with our creating a career path for success, which is our capstone. And so those are the 9 courses. It's a total of 6 months. As Melissa mentioned, it's 54 hours long, and each course is 2 hours. We meet once a week. Mm-hmm.
Do you meet exclusively face-to-face, or do you have virtual sessions as well? Do you combine? How's that set up?
We can do both. So, this started, our program started during COVID. And so everything became online. That was part of our pivot. We started offering these courses online, and it's instructor led. So we are still, having that one-on-one conversations, training, facilitating. Basically is not training, it's more of a facilitation of conversations. And then we have breakout sessions where the individuals can go into these great, have deeper conversations in their breakout sessions. So it can be done either in person or virtually. The training here with Pepperdine is virtual. Mm-hmm.
Got it. Thank you. And so are your programs kind of what we call lockstep, so that your clients go through each module sequentially kind of together, or can they do it sort of one module and then come back to months later, or does it need to be kind of sequential the way that you have it set up?
Yeah, great question, Dr. Brahm. So because the way the program is delivered, it is progressive, sequential, and of course, we do it as I think we mentioned, we do it as a cohort. So we go through it kind of lockstep because each course builds on the next one. And it culminates with that capstone.
And then, of course, once the program is completed, they receive a certificate of completion. So it is needed for them to receive their certificate of completion.
So can you tell us a little bit more about what the courses are, maybe giving us just a quick overview of each of the courses and then telling us more about what the capstone entails?
Yeah, so again, like Cynthia mentioned, we start out, the first course is Mastering Everyday Confidence. Cynthia, do you want to speak about, you know, the background on this course a little bit?
Right. So, you know, our program, our training was created by women for women. And we've collaborated with leadership experts or women who are experts in a particular subject matter. And so we work with there's several authors that we work with. One of them is Alyssa DeVere. She's the CEO of American Confidence Institute. So all she does is teach on confidence, right? And so through her book, Confidence is a Choice, our first course, Mastering Everyday Confidence, comes from the training with Alyssa DeVere. So Alyssa's way of looking at confidence, it's science-based. And so I'll let Melissa talk more about that, but science-based ways of how to overcome confidence blocks, right? Confidence situations. And then we also have Dr. Brene Brown, and I'm sure many of you have heard of her. So we use some of Dr. Brene Brown's training, Dare to Lead. And that's in our leadership course. So, you know, we mentioned a phrase that was used. That was one of Dr. Brene Brown phrase that is part of her Dare to Lead training. So if you are familiar with Dare to Lead, the Dare to Lead book, you know, Brene Brown is most known for her TED Talk on vulnerability. And so we have in our training about having those courageous conversations. And then we also have the Women of Influence with Jo Miller. So Jo Miller is, she's a globally renowned leadership expert in women. And so a lot of what, you know, we take bits and pieces from her book, Women of Influence, and we share on the training on that as well. Branding is one of them. You know, we talked about, you know, how you want to be seen when you're not in the room. And many others. We touch on many different areas within this training. It's not particular to just one course, but there's various parts of the training in which we have Jo Miller's Women of Influence research and training on that. And then we also have the negotiation part. So, you know, negotiating is not, although, you know, I talked about how women, you know, get paid less than men on average. We get paid about 84 cents. For women of color, it's a lot less. I believe for Latinas, it's like 53 cents for every dollar that a man earns. And so negotiation is so important when it comes to the workplace, right? But it's not just negotiating your salaries. There's opportunities to negotiate many times when we might not be aware of. And so we look at different case scenarios in opportunities to negotiate. And we utilize Deborah Kolb, who it's Negotiating at Work. And Deborah, she's also a leader in negotiations, and she also works in her works are women negotiation for women. And so we work with her trainings and her material to train women on how to negotiate, whether it's an assignment where you're giving more, you know, workload, you're looking for some growth opportunities. It could be, you know, the number of employees that you need and you need more personnel. There's different things that we have to negotiate at work. It could be a vendor, right? That's an obvious there, working with a vendor or a supplier, but other opportunities where there's an opportunity for us to negotiate. So those are some of the areas, and I'll let Melissa touch more on that.
Thanks, Cynthia. Yeah, so Dr. Gabby, as Cynthia mentioned, our first course, Mastering Everyday Confidence, comes from Alyssa DeVere's book. And so really in this course, we focus on clarifying what confidence is, understanding how to calibrate and control confidence in difficult business situations, as well as demonstrate how to communicate confidently. There's lots of activities in this. We do a self 360 assessment. We look at our own key confidence indicators. We talk about ways to master your mindset when you find yourself in that situation where, your confidence, we talked about the gaslighting or the microaggression. So how do you master your mindset to overcome that? Taming those triggers. Alyssa gets into the science of your brain and the amygdala and your prefrontal cortex and how those things work together and how you can overcome those. And she called them autonomic overrides. We talk about decision making. We go through, it's called the big decision confidence checklist. We have an activity that is very personal, but it very much drives home confidence, and it's called the eulogy activity. And then we have what we call exorcise away waste words and subservient language. So that's our first course. And then we jump right into goal setting for success. And here, this is about, it's New Year's. Everybody says, my goal for this year is I want to lose, 15 pounds or whatever it is. And then, what do you do with that? Well, in goal setting for success, we help people figure out what are the important categories. We go through an exercise figuring out what are the categories that are important in your life, in your career. Okay. And then we do a free writing exercise to write down, everything that you think you want to accomplish. Now, how do you take that and prioritize that into a goal? And by the end, they have a method that revolves around impact on starting their success toward achieving their goals. And of course, we touch on the foundations of SMART principles and goal statements, and then we go into a level up your brand. And of course, this goes into this is Joe Miller's work, and in there we talk about we go through exercises on finding your strengths, your passions, your values. How to create a personal brand, how do you sharpen one's brand? How do you, it's important as women to amplify our accomplishments. We don't do that enough. How many times, like maybe you got a promotion or you got an award or something at work and somebody says, hey, great job or congratulations. And you're like, thanks. Or you might say, I was just doing my job. No, you say, thanks, I did great. We want women to, cheer themselves on, so we go through how do you amplify your accomplishments. We talk a lot about that. And then we jump into the next course is our accountability and self-awareness. This is so important. This goes back to that confidence piece and being self-aware. We talk about accountability, not only of personal accountability, but as a leader, what are some tools and some ways that you demonstrate accountability, but you hold others accountable. It's about understanding the emotions and the feelings that come with that, improving self-awareness, self-control, and working on, our efficiencies and increased productivity. From there, we jump right into conflict resolution. Cynthia mentioned that. We try to look at it from a perspective of conflict is not always negative. We talk about conflict resolution, the phases, what styles of conflict. We have some activities that require the participants to engage in some conflict resolution. We also talk about processes and prevention of conflict, as well as we touch on anger and stress management techniques. And then we move into strategic leadership, power, and influence. And this is based on the work of Brene Brown and Dare to Lead. And, here we do a lot to examine the challenges that women face in leadership, vulnerability. I don't know about you, but I learned quickly in the Army that being vulnerable is a weakness. And again, it's about changing the narrative because being vulnerable is a strength. And so we talk about that a lot. We talk about learning to rise. We take them through a process on that. We discuss myths of vulnerability. We talk about strategic thinking. We look at those tools, those conversation starters to have those tough conversations. We talk about the armored versus daring leadership. And through that, we create what is called a rise plan. And this is to how do you rise above those challenges that women face? What are the challenges that you're facing at work right now? What are the actions that now that you have this information, what are the actions that you need to take? And they have activities. Some of the activities may require them reaching out to, their supervisors, coworkers, the people who work for them, to start to work on this and develop this. And then in that, we jump to our executive presence and communication. And this is really centered on that daily presence and public communication skills, understanding what executive presence looks like, how to command the room with confidence, poise, composure. We touch on the Amy Cuddy in the power pose. We talk about that. How do you master the fear and get comfortable with being uncomfortable? It's about, how do you, now that we've talked about confidence, how do you harness that self-confidence and feel relaxed and prepared? How do you feel about speaking in public, and the benefits that this executive presence and communication have? Because again, this goes back to, that personal brand. How do you want to be spoken of in a space that you're not physically present in? And then after that, the last course is our capstone, which is creating their personal growth plan. And so really what that is they're digging into that impact method. They're taking a look at each of the courses, all the information that they've been given, and they're developing their roadmap, their blueprint. And we tell them, a 4 to 6 minute presentation in any format. We want to know what their takeaways were from the lessons, and how they are applying them, or how they plan to use them in the future. We really want to hear them say they're using the techniques right now, like we heard from some of the women in some of the cohorts that we've worked with already. And we want them to use that impact method, because that really takes you from the A to Z, so to speak, because we don't want them to lose sight of what it is that they need to feel successful, fulfill in their careers or in their professional development. And so if there's any questions about that.
It's interesting. In my 724 course, the ethics course, I have them do a eulogy as well, right? As part of the conversation around ethics and social justice, and what do they want to be remembered for? And so I think it's a really powerful tool. It's good to hear that you all use it. I don't know if you use it in the same way, but it's definitely, when you have to kind of take a look at your own mortality, it gives participants a different perspective, for sure.
Absolutely. It's another lens that, it's a time we don't want to think about in our life, but It's all about not so much about what we want people to say about us, but how are we going to be remembered?
Right. Well, thank you for sharing that detailed that overview of each of the courses. I think that's really helpful, and it gives people a little bit more understanding. And we are at time, so I wanted to just ask if there's anything else you'd like to share with our listeners, or anything else you'd want to share as we close.
To get in touch with us. If you have an interest in this program, you can go to info@herelementnetwork.com. That's the email, or just go to our website. So herelementnetwork.com. All the information is in there. There's also a form that you can fill out so that we can give you a call and have that one-on-one discussion about any questions you might have regarding this program. We have our next program coming up on February the 27th. And so that will be on a Monday in the evening. It's from 6 to 8 p.m. Pacific time. If you have an interest, reach out. We're excited to meet you, to get to know you, and answer any questions you might have.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much. So fascinating. Loved hearing all of it. Love your work.
Thank you.
Well, with that, you all know that I'm a big fan. Always looking to support the organization and the work, and obviously with our partnership as well here at Pepperdine. Looking forward to our continued collaboration and partnership. So if there's no other comments from the panel or our esteemed guests, I can go ahead and close this out.
Thank you so much for this time, Dr. Gabby. We appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yes, thank you, ladies.
Wonderful. And with that, thank you all for joining us. If you've enjoyed today's session, please remember to click the subscribe button. Have a wonderful rest of your week, and we'll see you all next week.